to Baal Sulam's Matan Torah with commentary by Rabbi Avraham Mordechai Gottlieb, who we'll be referring to as the Rebbe Shlita. We are reading from Giving, the English translation. We are on page 78, a little bit above the middle, section 9. The header reads, 1. Why do we feel shame when receiving a free gift? We're continuing from a prior class where we were speaking about the notion of shame and free gift and how refining ourselves to reach the state of receiving in order to give, meaning receiving altruistically, is our intended purpose and goal. So why do we feel shame when receiving a free gift? Second bullet point is, the character of a root determines what is agreeable to a branch connected to that root. Okay, understandable. And 3, God is our root, so we are pleased by what flows from him. In general, loving kindness, chesed, and displeased by whatever is not his manner, in general, selfishness. The Baal Sulam begins. At this point, it's appropriate for us to reflect on the root and source of this natural law, and who it was that gave birth to the insult of shame and discomfort that we feel upon receiving charity from another. Actually, this phenomenon follows from the principle familiar to natural scientists that each branch has basically the same nature as its root, and the customary manners of the root will also be agreeable to the branch. We learn that everything in physical reality is a branch of the spiritual roots above. The upper worlds and the principles that exist there are all coming down here. Something as simple as gravity, water going downwards, hair that flows downwards, being an access to the body. I mean, everything is a symbol, and it's beautiful to discover the roots of our lives so that we can have the right lenses to see why it is that things happen and why things are the way they are. And if we don't understand, we have the opportunity to rise above our das, rise above our knowledge. But in any case, we see that whether it's natural scientists or quantum physicists, that science is inching ever closer to discovering what's been known for thousands of years by the Jewish people. As Michio Kaku, a master quantum physicist, said, as I've mentioned in a prior class, that what we're discovering in quantum physics today was known by the Kabbalists of the Zohar 2,000 years ago. How a Japanese-American quantum physicist knows such an idea, I don't know, but it's fascinating. To continue, the branch will love and desire to get benefit from them, being the root, or benefit from them being the characteristics. Conversely, the branch will also distance itself from whatever is not compatible with its root. It will not be able to bear it and will also be damaged by it. This law holds good for each root and its branch. It cannot be breached. It's a perfect law. Here, a window opens up before us to understand the source of the universal principle underlying all the constant joys and afflictions in our world. The Rebbe Shlita says here is the key, here is hidden the key to one of the central issues of our lives. Why do some things give us joy and pleasure, and regarding other things we feel pain and affliction? The answer is whatever is included in our root, namely the Creator, gives us a feeling of pleasure and joy. For example, wisdom, bliss, humility, and good character traits. And we dislike foolishness, weakness, and stupidity, receiving a free gift from someone else. For in our root, there is no receiving. A quick note regarding foolishness I just learned recently in the Rebbe Shlita's commentary on the Zohar, as he has several, And one is written for the everyday person called Zohar Havoda, and the other one is for the more systematic Kabbalistic student called Zohar Harakia. But anyways, in Zohar Havoda, there's an extra comment regarding foolishness and how foolishness is in contrast to wisdom. But if not for the foolishness, we wouldn't be able to appreciate the wisdom. Just like without the darkness, we can't appreciate the light. So much so that the foolishness itself actually is included in the wisdom because it is the necessary vessel or stepping point to get to the wisdom, because it's the lower aspect. And thus, it actually increases the holiness of wisdom. Interesting. We need all these contrasts of dark and light, receiving and giving, left and right, so on and so forth. And God willing, walk the middle path, as we've spoken about, which is the balance of feeling completeness, because everything's from the Creator, and also a maximum of 30 minutes a day of reflecting on our ego, on our selfishness. And even when we see the evil within, to be happy. Because every time we notice something, it's a revelation. It means the Creator is revealing it within our consciousness. And we can't fix what we can't see. So we'll step an inch closer to the Vekus with Him. To jump back into the Baal Sulam, since God is the root of all the creatures that He created, therefore we will sense as fragrant and pleasing all that is included within Him and flows to us directly from Him. For our nature is close to that of our root, or closer than we think. And everything which is not God's manner is not drawn to us directly from Him, but rather is determined by the pivotal point of creation itself, the desire to receive. Will be against our nature and difficult for us to tolerate. The desire to receive is the pivotal point because the desire to receive is not existent within the Creator. The Creator is termed in Kabbalah as Yesh Me Yesh, is that is, because the Creator just is, above space and time. He was, is, and always will be. The absolute eternal perfection. Whereas the will to receive, which is our root, is Yesh Ma'ayin. It's something from nothing. Nothing being, it's a totally new creation. It's a chiddush, it's a novelty, because it doesn't exist within the Creator. There's a quote that's relevant to this in Inner Work. That's quoted from the Rebbe Shlita's book, Magalot Hashanah, page 722. But it's on page 145 at the top of Inner Work, which of course can be downloaded as a free PDF. The link is in the description. The Rebbe Shlita says, a person diagnosed with cancer wants to get rid of it. This is what it means to really want something. The person's life revolves around this and the desire, then the person will do anything possible to be healed. It is the same with regard to desire to receive. Our life depends on overcoming it. When we realize that we will do everything possible, even the most unconventional things, to be free from it. And this is alluding to the spiritual work of noticing the evil within, being aware of it, reflecting on it, like I had just mentioned. And everything we notice is a revelation. But the more we see the poison, the more we see the self-destructive nature that is our ego, the more that we will at least desire to distance from it and request and pray and ask the Creator to give us the strength to overcome it and to rise above the desire. We don't want to destroy the desire, eliminate it. That's a very pivotal difference between Eastern practices and Judaism. Eastern practices might want to completely destroy and eradicate the desire. Better to have no desire, so there's no suffering. We understand otherwise. All our desires, let alone our thoughts and our feelings, are implanted to us from the Creator, because there's nothing but Him. Einon Movado. We are the soul behind all those feelings and thoughts that has the free will to respond. And our free will is dependent on our environment, our friends, the books we read, so on and so forth. In any case, to rise above our desire, but still have it, is much more valuable. Because how are we supposed to gain the muscle of our spiritual sense, the sixth sense, so to speak, the sense and desire to give, without first having the great desire to receive that we need to overcome? And in any case, as our desire to receive develops, as we develop our desire to give, because it goes hand in hand, otherwise we wouldn't be able to grow, that's necessary, because the end goal, or at least the end gift, is that we'll be able to receive in order to give. So once our desire to receive is totally created and totally developed, we'll be able to receive that much more light in order to be pleasing to the Creator. As the Baal Shalom said, the will to receive will be against our nature and difficult for us to tolerate. And so, slowly but surely, may we merit in noticing the cancer that is our will to receive, until, God willing, one day it becomes totally corrected and we can receive altruistically. The Baal Shalom continues. Thus, we love rest and detest movement to the extent that we only move in order to attain some rest. The reason for this is that our root does not have the character of movement, but rather, God is at rest and has no manner of motion. Therefore, movement is against our nature and repugnant to us. Fascinating. In the same way, we very much love wisdom, strength, wealth, etc. Because all these are included within Him who is our root. And so we despise their opposites, such as foolishness, weakness, poverty, as the Rebbe Shlita mentioned in his comment, because they are not at all to be found in our root. These give us a feeling of loathing and detestation, and cause insufferable pain. There are several comments from the Rebbe Shlita to end this section on this paragraph. But before that, I want to digress just a little bit to talk about the notion of wealth, because it can be a little confusing. Okay, wisdom, strength, but how is wealth attributed to the Creator? Wealth for us practically is being happy with our portion. Samech b'chelki, happy with my portion. Or for man to be happy with his portion. Samech b'chelko. That's richness. Meaning, I have everything I need. And the Creator being perfect is wealthy, so to speak, by definition. Because He has everything. And by definition, He has no lack. We are the lack. The creation's raw material, the chomer, is the lack. The Vilna Gaon says in his commentary of Mishlei, in Perek 15, verse 15, a person who has mastered the attribute of appreciating what he has is in the same state and emotionally high as the person who is inebriated during the height of the pleasure of a party. So if you want to get high, if you want to have the real pleasure, at least this is referring to the right line of feeling perfection, feeling shleimus in our work, in our being, because what we have in this moment is exactly what the Creator willed for us to have. It's important to note the notion of emunas hachamim. The Vilna Gaon was a great spiritual master, along with the Baal Sulam, the Baal Shem Tov, the Ramchal, and so forth. He is not speaking out of theory. This is a quote based off of tangible daily experience. So too, when the Rebbe Shlita, the Baal Sulam, talks about particular experiences or perceptions, also it's from a matter of experience, something tangible and not theory. An interesting digression, just to give a little bit of history, for those that are not so familiar, is the creator of most Kabbalistic systems today that we have, being Lurianic Kabbalah. And he, so to speak, has been termed the Gan Eden. And there's 4 rivers that stream from this Gan Eden that are corresponding to Pardes, which is describing the 4 levels of interpretation of the Torah, being Pshat, the simple understanding, Remez, which is the hint, Drush, which is the metaphoric understanding, and of course, Sod, which is Kabbalah in itself, the secret. And who is the secret? What is the secret? The Creator himself, because he's behind everything. Nothing but him. So generally speaking, though there's different opinions, the Rashash is the Pshat. He's one of the rivers, the Vilna Gaon, and the Ramchal. Moshe Chaim Luzzatto from Italy, who was a great Kabbalistic master as well. He was writing Kabbalah books as early as his late teens, early 20s. And there's a debate between them two, whether who is Remez and who is Drush, the hint to the metaphoric. And then the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Chassidus, is said to be the Sod. Why do I say this? Because the Rebbe Shlita says that the Baal Sulam is a fusion between the way of the Baal Shem Tov and the Arizal. And that is why his Torah has such great power. But even more so, the Baal Sulam is, in a way, superseding the Arizal, the same way that Arizal superseded all the accepted way in our tradition. Why? Under the same light of Emunas Chachamim, faith in our sages, we trust about their spiritual levels. We trust regarding their righteousness, the things that they said. And the Baal Sulam said in personal letters to his father, and he told his father that he's only sharing the information because he wanted to honor his father and give him nachas, give him pleasure, in essence. And it's understood that the Baal Sulam never wanted such information to be known to the public, as these were personal notes to his father, let alone other family members where he exclaimed such an idea. But he claimed that through God's will, through the merit of the generation, not through the merit of his own work, he received the soul of the Arizal. He received an Ibor, so to speak. There's different types of reincarnation. There's an idea that sometimes we are just born with a particular soul. But there's also an idea that throughout our lives, as we grow, we can actually be incepted or impregnated, so to speak, with a soul. So the Baal Sulam was impregnated, so to speak, with the soul of the Arizal. And the proof is in the pudding, because after such a claim, he went on to not only organize all of the writings of the Arizal, which were completely disorganized with great confusion, he organized it completely in the Talmud of Sefirot, and also wrote a major commentary on the entirety of it. Not to mention what he's known for and his namesake, the Sulam, the commentary on the Zohar, and it's also a translation from Aramaic into Hebrew. Even if he wasn't a person who received the Ibor of the Arizal, his work stands as such. And it's a great merit for us to be connected to it. So the Rebbe Shlita says, regarding that which is not in line with us is repugnant. In our case, movement, because our root, the Creator, is at rest. He says, motion is not applicable to the divine realm, for all motion derives from some deficiency, and there is no deficiency in divine reality. But there is motion in the human realm. For when we don't feel well, we have to search to improve our situation. And so we move from place to place. Even something as small as a fidget or a stroke of the beard, whether it's subconscious or unconscious, is coming from a lack. The fact that we get out of bed in the morning means that we still have tikkunim, we still have corrections to make. We have good actions, ma'asim tovim, and mitzvot to do, and Torah to learn, and to actualize and integrate. And the idea is also that we wouldn't be able to do anything unless we saw some type of reward. But what we're aiming for is so that we have the desire that our reward won't be the pleasure in itself, but it'll be the ability to just serve and to do and to get pleasure from just that. Meaning my reward is the work in itself. And that's freedom. Because in the meantime, we're enslaved by our ego to want to receive something or the other. Interesting note from the book translated by Yedida Cohen, as written by the Rebbe Shlita, master of the ladder, which is also found in the description. There's a case where the Baal Sulam either recommended or observed that his students, in their times of their spiritual dissensions, because we all go through waves, it's only natural. We need this contrast, as we spoke about earlier in the class, of light and darkness, foolishness and wisdom, so on and so forth. So in the times of the dissents, it seems that the Baal Sulam students would fill such a lacking with something as simple as food, and perhaps more food. Just a simple example to paint that even spiritual masters and tzaddikim can make use of simple material things like food and the like to fulfill a lacking in order to get past that and attach to higher desires, of course, being dveikus, unity with the Creator. The Rebbe Shita continues, therefore, when the Ari, being Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, of Tzfat, wants to define divine perfection, he says that the supernal light is in a state of complete rest. His intention is, of course, not physical rest, but perfection. The concept of rest is identical with perfection, for in a perfect reality, there is rest and no need for motion. Thus, the divine realm is defined as complete rest. It follows that when a person gets to a state of cleaving with the Creator, who is at rest within himself, then the person will be at complete rest within his or her soul. From this, our rabbi, Baal HaSulam, deduces that herein lies the source of our thirst for rest. Each individual aspires to arrive at a state of inner calm and quiet that is similar to the fixed state of God. All of our deficiencies derive from the essential starting point of creation, which is the desire to receive. And it never allows us to rest. For whatever or however much we have, we always want more. It follows that we are unable to get to a state of rest due to this pivotal point of creation. Nonetheless, we want to get to such a state. And here is explained the reason for this longing. In the Rebbe Shita's follow-up comment, at the end of the Baal Sulam's paragraph, that reads, these give us a feeling of loathing and detestation and cause insufferable pain, being the opposite characteristics of the Creator, foolishness, weakness, poverty, and the like. The Rebbe Shita says, but people do in fact enjoy receiving. How can that be? How can we get pleasure from receiving when our source has no aspect of receiving? The answer is that people don't really get satisfaction from receiving because the body, which is guf in Hebrew, is a code word actually for the desire to receive, the ratzon lakabel, never allows a person to get all the pleasure that it wants from receiving. And this is due to, quote, the spiritual principle brought down by our sages: whoever has one measure of something will want a double measure. So, if we build our whole lives on receiving, we are condemned to suffering. Receiving is the essential innovation in the creation, the single element that is not included in the Creator. The small amount of pleasure that the Creator imprinted in this element of receiving is the minimal amount of oxygen that has been given to humanity in order to survive until it recognizes that the correct path of life is founded on giving. Between this time and that, people continue to suffer greatly from a lack of satisfaction. It could be that it's all relative, meaning receiving in itself isn't pleasurable. Maybe we have that instance of rest relative to fulfilling our lack. When we're hungry, we have a lack. When we eat, we fulfill that lack. And then we're at a state of rest because we're no longer hungry. And that feeling of completion, perhaps, is that small taste of rest and perfection. But in reality, there's still a giant lack because we are yet to be corrected. Perhaps that's what the Rebbe Shlita is alluding to here, being that receiving in itself isn't pleasurable. Unfortunately, for the most part, at least based on my observations, I could be wrong, but this is understood, that our education system is built on receiving. Children are taught time and time again, at least in the Torah world, that if they do X, Y, and Z, they will receive a reward. And that's fine. That's how a child should start off. It makes sense. Do this and you'll get a candy. But this is not our first rodeo. We are old souls. We are very developed behind the veil of the body. And a child, arguably from a young age, can already be exposed to these notions of giving and receiving, the notion of the perfection, the devekus that we are trying to attain. Because otherwise, you have a child who is within such a system and then grows up and believes and thinks that everything they're doing in the realm of Torah mitzvot is to receive either reward in this world or the next world. And that's not the goal. The goal is to come to a second nature. The goal is to be one with the Creator in form, being altruist, being righteous. It's not the candy. It's the giver of the candy that we're trying to get to. So for those that are connected to those who also learn and want to expose them to such ideas and such learning, it's incumbent. The Jewish people need it. Rebbe Shita continues, we are continually drawn to receiving because it is the pivotal point of creation. And if you are not prudent in guiding your actions, you'll continue to deteriorate. For the desire to receive is a system that destroys itself. And we just said that guf, being body, is a corresponding term to the desire to receive. And the body deteriorates. So the body is a branch of the root that is the desire to receive, that tells us that the desire to receive is destructive and in itself has no meaning and is illusory. But in the meantime, we have the opportunity to correct ourselves so that we can, again, come to the point of receiving in order to give, which is the highest level. Only if you take the path of giving, which is the path loved by the soul, you can find true, eternal, and complete joy. Again, not theoretical, something tangible that our sages of the past and even today experience. The taste of mitzvot, just like the taste of fruit, vegetables, and different cheeses. If we refine, we can taste such things. We can taste the beauty in the work itself. Only then are you not just a passing phenomenon. One must also distinguish between joy that comes from true giving and the joy that comes from giving when the giving is a means to receiving. The distinction turns on one point whose name is love. For if you love yourself alone, then you give to another only because you want to reap the profit of the pleasure and satisfaction you'll receive by means of the giving, not because you're interested in the other's welfare. This is still considered receiving, and you remain on the road to self-destruction. Only when the giving comes in a pure manner, because you desire that it will be good for the other person, and you're not just interested in your own welfare, then a feeling of supernatural joy will come to you. A feeling that is eternal. Again, not theory, but arguably a science or an algebra of the soul. That's sometimes how we describe the Chokhmat HaEmet, the true wisdom, the Kabbalah, the deepest parts of the Torah. And these feelings are tangible. There are those who have at least reached the conclusion that happiness, the happiness they seek, requires that they occupy themselves with some form of giving. However, they don't yet understand that, just as the nature of the Creator is pure, absolute giving without the slightest element of receiving, so each of us must continue to develop until we reach this state. Then we will arrive at the eternal and complete rest. But until then, we are condemned to extinction. For the divine reality does not sustain or tolerate compromises. The only solution for the survival of humanity is that we arrive at, quote, what's mine is yours, what's yours is yours. From Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Fathers, 5:10. And that is the defining characteristic of Israel, Yashar Kel, meaning everything we do is straight for God, and the other, because God is within all. In contrast to the character of Sodom, being what's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours, and the characteristic that's also a negative one, being what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. We're trying to be, in a way, non-existent. And a quick note before we part ways, Rav Noach Weinberg Zatzal of the Yeshiva, Ish Kodesh, in his book 48 Ways to Wisdom regarding rest. We've spoken about rest and completion today and how we desire that so much. He says rest is not just rest in itself, meaning not doing anything. For us, as people who want to serve the Creator, and work on ourselves and achieve and fulfill our lives with the greatest levels of happiness and pleasure and actually achieve our purpose, should have a concentrated rest. Exercise can be a concentrated rest if it's light. Light reading, that's not necessarily something more serious. If you're a yeshiva student, for example, or listening to music, or speaking with a friend and trying to arouse love for the other, and the like. Tov. Until next time, we're going to be on page 81, section 10. The bullet point for that is, since God does not receive, receiving is unpleasant to us. We're getting deeper into the ideas that we've spoken about today, and more. All the best.